Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another hour of Healthy Conclusions, where we try to give our listeners important information on nutrition, exercise, holistic, alternative, and integrative medicine. Please take a minute to visit our website at www.healthyconclusions.com and like us on Facebook. My name is Bob Neugebauer, and I will be your host for this evening's show. Tonight's show is being brought to you by Altrua Health Share, which has been serving its members and their families with their health care needs since 1997. Please take a moment to visit their website at altruahealthshare.org or call 888-244-3839 to see just what Altrua Health Share can offer you for your family's health care needs. It could mean substantial savings. We would also like to take a moment to invite you to a seminar that's being held by Dr. Stephen Baker and Michael Karfeldt, Getting to Know the Cause of Cancer. It's called Cancer Killers. It's going to be on Saturday, November 4th from 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. at Friendship Celebration Lutheran Church at 765 East Chinden Boulevard in Meridian, next to Zamzows. For more details, please go to the Health Conclusions Facebook page, and you'll find all the information you need to know there. Our guest for this evening is Jennifer Whitney. Jennifer is a certified holistic nutritionist, certified health coach, and certified GAP practitioner. She graduated from the Wellspring School of Healing Arts in 2011 and has been trained in Western and Eastern nutrition, the GAPS program, weight loss, applied kinesiology, desensitization techniques, and different types of cooking methods to heal the body. She regularly appeared on Dr. Michael's show. That's Dr. Michael Karfeldt from 2013 to 2014. And Jennifer is currently employed by the Karfeldt Center. Jennifer, it's a pleasure to have you here with us this evening on Healthy Conclusions. I understand you specialize in something called leaky gut. Could you explain to our audience what leaky gut is?
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Leaky gut is where there's actually holes in the barrier wall, the gut lining inside of the digestive tract. And when someone has leaky gut, different types of food that they eat doesn't get fully broken down and digested, and those little particles can seep through those holes into the bloodstream, as well as other types of pathogens. And that can do a number of harmful things on the immune system and all kinds of other things that you don't want to have being happening.
What types of things can happen when these particles fall through and get into the bloodstream?
Well, they can actually penetrate the blood-brain barrier and shut down different parts of the brain. And people can deal with symptoms that start to pose as autism, bipolar, depression, schizophrenia. They're foreign particles, so the body actually perceives those as foreign objects in a sense, so it will start to attack itself, and then different types of autoimmune conditions can start to happen, digestive issues start to happen. The body just kind of starts attacking itself. And so there's a huge amount of things that can happen because, it's not supposed to be happening like that. Nothing is supposed to be going through little holes into the bloodstream.
Well, we know we don't want them going through those little holes, but how do the intestines become permeable in the first place so that it would cause leaky gut?
Well, that happens from an imbalance that goes on inside of the digestive tract, and that imbalance is going on between your good bacteria and your pathogenic. You want like an 8-to-2 ratio of your good bacteria to, quote, your bad. I mean, we all have a little bit of bad in our digestive tract, but you want a lot more of the good. So you really should have about 6 pounds of good bacteria in your digestive tract at all times.
6 pounds?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And when those get out of whack, toxins and then different types of opportunistic bacteria can chisel away at the barrier wall. And that starts to create little tiny holes that are like leaky gut. So, yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Well, would one of those little buggers be something called candida?
Absolutely. It can be parasites, candida, fungus, heavy metals. That little amount of those opportunistic bacteria contain all the things that we just don't want to have overgrowing, like bad bacteria, viruses, things like that. And so having a lot more of the good keeps them in check because your good continually eats those. That's why you want a lot more of the good. It's kind of like your good army that helps to protect your health.
So how do you protect this good army, so to speak? How do you keep it well and in your digestive tract doing what it's supposed to do as opposed to the bad ones?
Well, you want to eat a diet that consists of foods that have a lot of specific nutrients to help continually nourish your digestive tract. And that's what, when I'm trained and run on a continual basis, what's called the GAPS diet. And that works with a lot of those key gut foods, which are different types of soup stocks, fermented foods like sauerkraut. You know, a lot of people are familiar with the gut shot, different types of kvases, yogurt, kefir, foods like that have a lot of good bacteria, good enzymes, collagen, gelatin, amino acids, those kind of things that help to really go in and nourish your gut. Because about 90% of your immune system is in your gut, so it's extremely important to have a healthy gut.
Well, if 90% of your immune system is in your gut, I would think that many people's guts would not be in very good condition nowadays with all of the processed food that they stuff into it.
No, this is actually a very big growing epidemic. I've been running the GAPS diet, which is specifically designed to heal leaky gut for over 4 years now. And I mean, I have so many clients coming in, and not just older clients, all ages. I have little babies that are 3 months old that I work with. It's an epidemic because we're kind of consuming more processed foods now than we've ever consumed. There's more chemicals being sprayed on our crops than there ever has been before. We're, having more genetically modified ingredients that are filtering into our food system. A lot of Americans are dealing with more stress than they're used to dealing with. There's a lot of different factors that contribute to having a leaky gut.
So what would be some of the symptoms of a leaky gut, and how would you determine that somebody has one?
Well, symptoms like a lot of food allergies, skin issues, autoimmune conditions, MS, ulcerative colitis, IBS, eczema, psoriasis. I work with all kinds of different autistic kids. Anything that truly relates to the immune system usually relates back to the gut, even when people have cancer. And I mean, usually there's gut stuff going on, because there's something going awry in the immune system. And the way that I determine if someone has leaky gut, I mean, just because I'm certified and trained in the GAPS diet and I've been doing this for a long time, I can just kind of go through and ask them a series of questions about how their digestion is working, how their immune system is working, what's going on. And I can tell truly, really with just in that little interview, which I spend over an hour doing, if they have leaky gut or if there's just an imbalance going on. But there's other tests that you can take. I mean, you can take a parasite test, you can take a food allergy test. A common one is called the lactulose mannitol test, that they test the urine. You can take a comprehensive stool test. But in general, if you have, autoimmune things going on, if you have a lot of food allergies, skin issues, heartburn, constipation, diarrhea, bloat, those are all signs that there's an imbalance going on in your digestive system.
So when you find somebody that has a leaky gut and it's been properly diagnosed as such, what's the first procedure you would do to help them get back to some normalcy?
Well, what I do is after I interview them, I actually put together a customized program. I really specialize in customizing everything because, you can take the same diet and put 10 people through it and everyone responds different. So what I work with a lot when I'm doing or helping people with leaky gut is the GAPS diet. So what I do is I print it out, I organize it, and I meet with them and I start to coach them through it. And I usually meet with them on a weekly basis in the beginning because the GAPS diet is 6 stages. And the first 2 stages are the most critical. And in stage 1, we actually remove all foods except for the key gut building foods like stocks, kefir, yogurt, and fermented foods, and ginger tea to start to heal the gut. It's kind of like putting your gut in the intensive care unit. We want to remove sugar, carbs, things like that can continually be causing inflammation and feeding an overgrowth of bacteria or fungus. And we kind of need to give it a rest and give it a lot of the foods with certain ingredients that are going to start to go in there and heal that tissue and start to rebalance that inner world, those inner good bugs.
You know, I found that some of these things that you're talking about I've tried before, but I do find that sometimes it's difficult to find things like kefir because it's not pasteurized in most cases. It's natural. And there's not a lot of places that carry it. You know, how do people find these things? Where do they go?
Well, in my programs, I actually have recipes for everything. So I actually coach them on how to make everything from scratch. I carry my own starters for kefir and yogurt. I tell them exactly what farms and farmers I want them to go and buy it from. I'm really picky with how I break it down because all that matters and how it's cooked matters. They have to have a certain amount of these foods on a daily basis for it to start to really go in there and heal the gut. I also have a food service. I work with a guy who is also a GAPS trained practitioner, and he has actually developed what I consider like a food pharmacy. And he delivers to about 80% of my patients that are on the GAPS diet. If they want that, that's not something they have to have, but it's really helpful. So he makes really nourishing soup stocks and soups and ginger tea. And then I do have the ability to tell them if they go to the health food stores, there are certain brands that make, kefir and yogurt that will work. I mean, they're not ideal, but I have a lot of clients that use them and they do get better. So you just want to be aware of which ones you're buying and, how much you're taking in. And if anyone really is going to do the GAPS, you really want to have a trained professional guiding you because the GAPS diet there's a lot to it.
Well, you say GAPS diet. I presume the letters stand for something.
Yeah, it stands for Gut and Psychology Syndrome. It was created by Dr. Natasha McBride, and she's actually has her degree in human nutrition and neurology. And after working with lots of kids that have different types of neurological conditions, she started to put the pieces together that these kids always had digestive issues. And then once she actually had her own son who ended up having autism, she created the GAPS diet. This was over in Europe. And then she opened her own clinic in England, and she actually cured her son of autism with the GAPS diet by age 7, and then went on, and now it's globally used. I mean, it's probably the most popular diet that people try to heal all kinds of different conditions.
You're talking about curing autism with the diet.
Yeah, our goal is to ideally reverse it. And, if we can work with a child, the younger the better. But I do have a lot of different patients that have autism, a lot of little kids and stuff, and their parents will bring them in just wanting to find and try something that's natural versus having to put them on medication, and also just giving them hope for the future to live a normal lifestyle. So, yeah, it's great. It's a natural treatment for autism.
Well, when 1 in 48 children have autism nowadays, it's a pretty critical situation, I would imagine. I would imagine you have a fair amount of patients coming to you.
I do. I have patients that come in with all kinds of things. I get cases that are sort of written off, like the incurable cases. People come in with all kinds of different symptoms, and honestly, I'll assess it and usually just go to the root, because the gut is kind of like the root of a tree. And if we can just simplify and go to the root and start simply to start to nourish and heal that gut, then a lot of these different things going on just naturally start to improve and get better.
Well, isn't that the basis for complementary and alternative medicines in a truest sense of the word? It's finding the root cause of a problem rather than in the mainstream medicine treating the symptoms, which they do mostly with pharmaceuticals.
Absolutely, yeah. And when you do that, even if you are someone that can't come off of all pharmaceuticals, it just helps them to work better. I mean, ideally, we want to help people come off of pharmaceuticals, but sometimes they can't. But if you really address your nutrition and the root, like that, because most of your immune system is in your gut, so when you eat foods that nourish it, everything just starts to work better. And usually they can at least reduce their medications.
We're going to have to take a quick break here. We'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to Health Conclusions, brought to you by Altrua Health Share with your host Bob Neugebauer on 580 KIDO AM and 107.5 FM. Welcome back to Health Conclusions on 580 KID AM and 107.5 FM. We're speaking with Jennifer Whitney, a nutritionist, and this part of the show is sponsored by AltruaHealthShare.org. All right, so we were talking about autistic children and how you can help them with diet. Now, I've been a proponent that diet is the key to almost everything. What you eat is what you are. And what your body rejects can also be a serious problem to you. How do you find it when you tell people that they have to change their diet? Do most of them accept it? Or do you find that it's very difficult and challenging to get them into this new modus operandi?
Well, most of the clients that come into me are coming into me with major conditions going on, conditions that they were told were incurable, and they want it. They're coming in seeking that. That doesn't mean they know how to cook. That doesn't mean that they've ever been in a health food store. So there is a huge lifestyle change that has to occur. But the way that I coach is I break it down. What I like to say is I break it down to sort of a kindergarten level where I print it out, I customize it, I give them recipes, and I really coach them on how to do it. And so I try to link what I recommend to here's a recipe that you can cook and try, different things like that. And so that really makes it easier for them. And then when they start to see results that food can give them, that are helping major conditions, that really gives them a lot of hope and inspiration. And most of the time, honestly, I've been working now for about 6.5 years. I've experienced really good things with people. They want it. And they've usually tried everything, by the time they've come in and they're seeking nutrition. And so this is a lot easier to them than taking medication or doing some sort of major, something that would have side effects. And so when they kind of change their mindset, then they're usually pretty open to it.
I'm curious, what would you say is an elimination diet? Because you say you start with an elimination diet in most cases when you're going to try and fix somebody with a dietary measure. How do you start an elimination diet? What do you do with it?
Well, you usually want to eliminate the most inflammatory foods, kind of like an anti-inflammatory diet in a sense. And when I'm going to coach that, I'm going to have them eliminate sugar, typically gluten, pasteurized dairy, soy, corn. Those are some of the most common foods that cause inflammation and irritation in the digestive tract. Processed foods that have MSG. And so usually people will start there, just trying to eliminate those plus processed foods. And we want them to then try to start cooking, hopefully more of these gut healing foods. Because if there's food allergies, we know there's an imbalance going on in the digestive tract. So I always start, if I have a case like that, always targeting strengthening the digestion. That doesn't mean they're going to do the GAPS diet, but we want to at least add in these key gut building foods. Because you can eliminate, but if you don't actually strengthen the digestive system, you're never going to truly improve. You have to strengthen your digestion because you want to rebalance your good bacteria to your bad. You want to improve the amount of digestive enzymes, the environment going on inside the digestive tract. And just by doing that, you can actually get rid of a lot of food allergies because you just start to digest food a lot better.
So, a question for you on whole foods. Mm-hmm. Now, I eat pretty much a whole plant food diet. And I've been on that for some time now. And I've had good and bad problems with it. It just kind of depends on how my system's taking. I think my system's trying to still get used to it. It's kind of difficult. But do you ever recommend a whole plant food-based diet to people? And if you do, why would you do it?
Well, it just depends. I interview someone and I find out what condition they're wanting to address and whether I'm running a diet to help. A lot of people come into me with cancer, so I run a specific nutritional diet to support their process they're going through for cancer. Or if they're just trying to relieve inflammation, we'll do an anti-inflammatory diet. If we're trying to build the gut, we'll do a GAPS diet. And we work with whole foods in all of those diets. And so, if someone has a hard time breaking down whole food, which includes fiber, different things like that, then most likely I'm going to put them on more of a GAPS diet because that is a common symptom of a gut imbalance. So, because on the stage 1 in the GAPS, we remove a lot of the fiber. We remove things that the body has a hard time breaking down. So it doesn't mean that it's bad because whole food is great. But if there's a weakness in the digestive system, then a lot of people have a hard time breaking down whole foods, especially raw foods, and we just have to present it in a different form to the body.
Let me ask you another question. Pancreatic enzymes, when you're young, your pancreas creates plenty of enzymes to digest almost anything you want to eat. But as you get older, it doesn't work quite the same way, and it's not creating the same amount of enzymes, which would basically tell you that you should be changing your diet as you get a little older, or taking enzymes. Is that something that is recommended, that people do take some enzymes along with the diets that they're on to help them with the digestive process because their body's not making enough of the ones they would normally need?
Yeah, taking enzymes is always very helpful typically. I mean, not everyone needs to do it. Sometimes they can just eat a little bit of sauerkraut or some form of fermented foods right before they eat, and that helps them to digest. Sometimes people will drink a little bit of apple cider vinegar and water, but I use a lot of different types of digestive enzymes with my clients. Yeah, it's definitely good. I mean, all of us start to produce less. Typically, it's past 35 that you really have to pay attention to that.
Well, I'm way past 35, so we don't have to worry about me. A couple of more questions on this leaky gut diets. How do you feel about the omega-3 fatty acids? We're talking about the high cholesterol stuff. They have changed the attitude pretty much in the scientific world, in the medical world, that they're looking at old school, that you should have been eating anything but butter and but fat and no coconut oil because that's all bad for you. Now they're saying that these things are all good for you. Are these things that you would put on a diet for somebody who is having problems?
Absolutely. We use healthy fats in every type of diet that I coach. I mean, for example, with the GAPS diet, when we're working on healing the gut, using healthy fats is very important. And I work with either, coconut oil, butter, ghee, ideally organic from grass-fed cows. Sometimes we do the traditional form of lard that people will make themselves, like duck fat, or beef tallow, things like that. Coconut oil is great, but the issue is how well they break down their fats. So that's something that I have to assess, when I talk to the client. And if, sometimes people have the strength to break down all these different fats. Sometimes people don't. So we'll start with more of the leaner fats like coconut oil, MCT oil. But fats are critical. Fat and protein help to heal the gut. And if the gut is healthy, they help to keep it strong. I mean, you need fat-soluble vitamins. Like, for example, with yogurt, you want to eat the organic, full-fat yogurt because you need the fat-soluble vitamins in the fat to actually assimilate and digest the calcium in the more liquid part of the milk. So if you remove fat, you actually don't digest your food and break down the proteins and stuff the way that you should.
How do you determine if somebody's body is able to break down the fat or if they are breaking it down?
I talk to them and I can tell if they have, if they're eating healthy fat, but they're getting gas after, they're getting bloated, they're not, going to the bathroom like they should. I can also test through applied kinesiology. I can test to see how well their body is breaking down fats. And so if that's an issue, it usually relates to the function of the liver gallbladder. There might be congestion going on in the gallbladder. And we, typically I can add in enzymes that are high in lipase. Lipase helps to break down fat, and also bile salts, which can also aid in helping to break down fats. Also drinking a little bit of apple cider vinegar and water can help them as well. But, by strengthening the gut and helping the gallbladder to work better, that can improve in time as well.
L-glutamine is something that I'm familiar with, and I take it as a supplement. How do you feel about different types of supplements when you're going on a diet like this as an augmentation process? And what do you think about L-glutamine in terms of a supplement?
Well, it just depends. So if they come into me and if I determine that they have a very severe case of leaky gut and they're going to do the GAPS diet, ideally in stage 1, there's 6 stages to the GAPS diet. And the first 2 are the most critical. It's the best if we can actually not use supplements and just work with the food. And L-glutamine it's great. It actually helps to heal and repair the tissue. It can act like a Band-Aid to prevent further damage to the tissue, but it's abundant in meat. And in the first part of the GAPS, I teach my clients how to make stock from meat. And that's how they get it, is through their soup stocks. And I mean, it's great. It's just that if the gut is not working that well, sometimes it doesn't break down supplements that well. So we want to use as little supplements as possible in the beginning. But if they have a pretty good digestive system and they can take it and not have any irritation, then that's fine as well. You just want to make sure that you have a really good source of L-glutamine, because you can get a lot of contamination through supplements.
We're going to have to take a quick break here. We'll be back in a few minutes. You're listening to Health Conclusions, brought to you by Altrua Health Share, with your host Bob Nugebauer on 580 KIDO AM and 107.5 FM. Welcome back to Health Conclusions. On 580 KIDO, we're speaking with Jennifer Whitney, a nutritionist from the Karfeld Clinic, sponsored by AltruaHealthShare.org. So we were talking about L-glutamine and fatty acids and all the things that are good for our gut and what we need to keep us stable. I had asked you about something called a candida fungus. I understand a lot of us have yeast infections. They seem to be pretty common nowadays amongst a lot of Americans. Why is it that we get these yeast infections, and how do they affect us, and what do they do to us?
Well, people get an overgrowth of yeast due to typically having an imbalance in the gut, which is really at the root. You have a lot more fungus and different things in there than you should, and you have a deficiency of the bugs, the beneficial bugs that we need to keep those underway. And that happens from eating way too much sugar, typically too many processed foods, lots of carbs like chips, bread, crackers, a lot of different fast foods. Those kind of things can definitely promote candida growth. A high glycemic diet, potatoes, french fries, bagels, all those things feed fungus. And so when you get an overgrowth of fungus, which is considered candida, it can cause rashes, bloat, digestive upset, all kinds of different things. The immune system does not function the way that it should, so you usually have brain fog. You can get sick a lot, have a lot of allergies. You know, it just isn't functioning the way that it should. And so it's very important to actually deal with that. When I do an intake with a lot of my clients and they come in to me with these certain conditions, usually what I find out is at the root they have candida, and they've usually had it for years. Typically they may have parasites, just something that it just isn't in balance, but that candida can just lead into other things that you don't want to have happen. So you want to go in and correct that. And you can do that by a candida diet, you know, not eating sugar, cutting down on the amount of carbs that you're eating, eliminating all white foods, processed foods, things like that, and going in there and rebalancing that digestive tract.
What actually is candida? I hear it's a fungus. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a fungus, exactly, that you have a lot of, and it can be systemic. And if it is systemic, you can really start to have symptoms going on. And it's very serious. I mean, a lot of times people don't realize how serious it is. But once you start to address it and you start to knock out that overgrowth of fungus and you start to get things back into balance, people typically start to function and feel a lot better. They don't get the bloat. They don't get, you know, just the brain fog and the things that you typically deal with when you're dealing with candida.
Well, I understand it also can promote psoriasis, which is something that they say is incurable. But I don't believe anything is incurable. I think everything is curable if you have the right process to do it. But is it possible for that fungus to get into your skin and start growing on your skin?
Absolutely. I've dealt with that and seen many clients that deal with all kinds of strange things that can occur on the skin, you know, like eczema, psoriasis, different types of fungal spots. And a lot of times I have certain clients that have done a fungal diet for months. They get it under control. They might even have a tiny bit of sugar, and those little fungal spots in the skin will come right back. And so that's typically systemic candida. And so you really want to deal with that. And the skin, you know, the eczema or the psoriasis, those are just symptoms telling you what's truly going on inside of your digestive tract.
And can these things just kind of pop up out of the blue? I mean, you may have never had them before, and all of a sudden they rear their ugly head, and you're laid up with this problem.
There's typically been an imbalance that has been going on for a long, long time. and you may just have been not paying attention to it or not noticing it. And then you start to notice it once you start to get the rash on your skin, but that doesn't typically just occur right away. That's occurring from several things that have been going on for possibly even several years. You know, a poor diet, eating too much sugar, and there's just a deficiency in the bugs, typically lactobacilli, these certain types of good bacteria that you need to have in abundance, and they're deficient. And then all of a sudden the gut's not working right, and then that trickles down to the immune system. I mean, psoriasis, there's a deficiency, there's an immune imbalance going on. And so you really want to work with addressing the root cause, not just putting cream on or taking medication. You want to deal with the root cause.
How do you feel about taking supplements like bone broth and collagen?
I think collagen is excellent. That is one of the few supplements that if I'm going to incorporate a really fast source of protein in, say if I have someone on the GAPS diet, I'll have them I really like the collagen from a source called Vital Proteins. They make a really nice collagen from beef, 100% beef and 100% fish. And each scoop is 9 grams of protein, and you can warm up homemade chicken stock and put a scoop of that in there, and it's very soothing on the digestive tract. But if you make your own meat stock, that's going to be full of collagen, gelatin, amino acids. Collagen is excellent. It helps the skin. It's the most abundant protein in the body, helps the tissues. It helps to heal the gut. It's a great source of protein. I really like that. It's better if you have leaky gut to get it through food, but it is actually a really good supplement to take. And then bone broth is good, but bone broth is something that you only want to consume if you have no gut symptoms going on. That's one of the biggest confusing things out there. If you have any type of inflammation in the gut, any type of leaky gut, you don't want bone broth. You want actually what is called meat stock, and you make that only within 2 hours. Bone broth you cook 24 to 72 hours. There's different kinds of amino acids in both, and bone broth contains a lot of glutamic acid, and glutamic acid actually works like MSG in the intestinal tract, and it can actually do harm if you have leaky membranes going on in the gut. So it's a little bit more complicated than people realize. It's a confusing thing out there.
That's interesting. So just by taking the bone broth, which a lot of people promote, on the supplement circuit, it could cause you to have problems. Absolutely.
Yep. I've pulled a lot of clients off of it because they come into my office and they're drinking it, and it's not their fault. They just didn't know. They didn't. I've just been specifically trained by Natasha herself. I had to go back and get certified in New York to run the GAPS diet. So I've just spent a lot of time training in this. But if you don't do that, you just don't know, but bone broth is different than what I use in the first couple stages of the GAPS diet to heal the gut. And it just has certain levels of amino acids that you don't want until your gut is in really good shape, meaning you're not having any of the symptoms like food allergies or diarrhea or constipation, things like that.
What about something like a supplement like NAC?
It's good, but I try to simplify. That's why I became a nutritionist, is so that when people come into me, I can work with helping them through food as best as possible. Honestly, I sell very few supplements. I carry only a few that I really need to use. And that was my goal, my dream is to help people through food as much as possible. So you can take all these different supplements, but it's better if you can try to get it through food. And then if you need a supplement with enzymes or probiotics, or different types of vitamins and omega-3, things like that, then that's fine. But it just varies per case. Some people don't need to take a lot of supplements.
How do you feel about probiotics?
I think that they're good. I think that you have to be extremely careful with which kind that you take. A lot of them are not made very well. Most of the time they're transient. They actually don't colonize in the intestinal tract. So I have my certain ones that I like, and I try to just get them in more through fermented foods. But if there's, if someone has severe leaky gut, it's really those fermented foods that we want to work with because they actually get down all the way to the base of the colon. Probiotics typically only make it down halfway. You want to get the ones that are acid resistant, which is great because they can get down lower. But if you can take, different types of fermented foods, those get all the way down. So I have better results with that. And that's what I try to start to work with in the beginning. I mean, on the GAPS diet, I don't even typically put people on probiotics until stage 4, which means they've been on it for a couple months, unless I have to. But, there's a really good probiotic called Progert, which is it's a human strain, and that's one of the few that's been tested and showed that it can actually colonize in the intestinal tract. But not very many of them do. Most of them are transient.
Did you say Progert?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Progert. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to remember that one. There are so many things to remember here. Just a couple of more things here. Stress. We haven't talked about stress, and I understand stress has a very important part to play in your immune system, but also in having leaky gut. We're going to have to take a quick break, but we'll come back to that in a minute. We'll be back to you in a few minutes, ladies and gentlemen, to Healthy Conclusions, brought to you by Altrua Health Share with your host, Bob Neugebauer, on 580 KIDO AM, 107.5 FM. Welcome back to Health Conclusions on 580 KIDO. We're speaking with Jennifer Whitney, sponsored by AltruaHealthShare.org. So we were talking about stress and how stress could trigger leaky gut and autoimmune symptoms. How many people do you find this in what you do? Is there a fair amount of them, or is this something unusual?
Yeah, a lot of people, that are just trying to keep up with the American lifestyle. People are working 40 hours plus a week. They're trying to raise a family. They're trying to make a living. I mean, that in itself is quite stressful. So there's a lot of people that come in and they have been dealing with stress for a long time. And what happens is then they're dealing with adrenal fatigue. And then that can affect the thyroid and the metabolism. And, if you're under a lot of stress, say you have had certain traumas and things like that you haven't addressed, that can all affect the way that the immune system works. And if you're on the go all the time and you're eating in a rush and you're under what we say is just that fight or flight, where the body's always excreting that cortisol and you're just kind of tense, and people just don't digest the food the way that they should. I mean, they're not just relaxed and eating. They're not taking the time to chew up their food. The first place the digestion starts is in the mouth. I mean, you really want to chew your food well and then swallow. And so if you're in a rush and you're eating in a hurry, you're swallowing big chunks of food and your stomach is tight, you just don't digest the food the way that you should, and it can sort of rot in the gut. And that can definitely trigger leaky gut symptoms. And if the leaky gut symptoms are triggered, then that can trigger autoimmune symptoms. And one thing I actually want to clarify is that you don't always just have to have leaky gut, really, to try to work on your gut. I mean, I have a lot of clients that come in that have food allergies going on, IBS, different symptoms that are not normal in a sense, but they might have just a lot of inflammation in the gut and an imbalance in the good bugs in the gut, but they don't have the holes yet. I mean, you don't want that to happen. That's kind of like the last stages. By the time you get leaky gut, there's been an imbalance going on in the intestinal tract for a long time. And, but things that can trigger it are pharmaceutical drugs, taking antibiotics, birth control pills, steroids, stress. All those things can target triggering leaky gut. It also depends on how baby was born. If they were born cesarean, which is happening now more than ever, they're not exposed to that first part where they get those good bugs from their mom that they usually get when they go through the vaginal canal. And hopefully they're being breastfed. That's where it truly starts. And so there's a lot of different factors, that kind of come into play when we talk about leaky gut.
But stress is a factor.
It is a factor. I think emotional stress, I think just daily stress, all that stuff has to do with everything. I think it's one of the most important things to deal with. I think it can be a cause to every different condition. I mean, when I work with cancer patients, they usually determine that stress was one of the top things that caused it. It's interesting. I mean, when it comes to the digestion, people, if they're stressed, they just don't eat the same. I mean, they're not even hungry because there's cortisol is just shooting through their body all the time.
Now, you've mentioned cortisol twice. Can you explain to us what cortisol is and how it affects us?
Well, it's a stress hormone, adrenaline, cortisol. That's what the body excretes when it's in that fight or flight mode, when you're stressed. And so it just changes the way that your body functions, and you just don't have the same appetite that you would normally have if you don't have that going on. I mean, you want to be more in that relaxed state, what we call the parasympathetic state. That's where the body heals. That's where the body digests food well. And that's when you're not in that fight or flight mode. And so one of the simplest things, honestly, that my clients can do to start helping de-stress is like a 5-minute guided meditation. I mean, it sounds crazy, but you can do this for free. And people, my clients, when they start to do that, you know, whether it's 3 times a week or daily, they found that that can really help to sort of reset that immune system and reset that body to not always be in that stress state.
How do you do a 5-minute guided meditation? How do I put myself to sleep, I guess? I'm not sure, but how would you do that?
Well, usually they will you can download really good ones from like Deepak Chopra or Louise Hay. They're some of the more common, very well-known people.
Who are those people again?
Deepak Chopra, he's a very well-known, I would consider a master of meditation. He's a teacher, and he has a center in California, and he teaches and trains people on meditation.
I presume he's Indian?
And I think he is.
Okay.
But you can just download it. You know, you can put it on your iPhone. My clients will put it on their phone. They like to do that because then they can lay in their bed and then just listen to that for just a few minutes. I mean, you can start simple. But really just doing anything that helps to kind of put you in that calm state. You know, taking a couple of deep breaths when you eat, sitting down at a table. I mean, do you know how many people actually don't even sit down to eat?
Yes, I do.
It's just, it's really a big thing right now. I mean, you want to actually sit down and just take a few minutes to truly eat and, chew your food and digest it and enjoy it.
It's too bad we can't get a lot of our drivers out there on the roads to start doing some meditation, although I'd be worried about that.
That would be good.
Might be a little scary. Just one more thing that I really wanted to touch on. Organic foods. I've been on organic foods for 2 years now. How do you feel about them, and how important are they?
I think they are extremely important, honestly. I think that the more organic that you can eat, the better. For one, that hopefully guarantees, I mean, we never know for sure, but they say that that label will guarantee that you're not getting genetically modified ingredients, which is very, very critical. Also, you're not getting the sprays. I mean, there's more Roundup and chemicals being sprayed on our crops now more than ever. I mean, within the last 60 years. And we're finding more people with glyphosate, which is from Roundup, in their bodies. And that's causing a lot of problems. I mean, that in itself can create an imbalance in the digestive system. And I mean, we have people that come into our clinic in Meridian often, believe it or not, in the spring, summer that are very sick just from sprays, that are
in the fields,
being sprayed in the field. Yeah, the crop dusters, and they'll come in and they are really ill. So I think that it's critical. I mean, not everyone can afford it, but there's so many good things going on. Costco, there's about 80 ingredients now at Costco. You can even get sauerkraut now. I was really excited to hear that. We have Whole Foods. We have all these great health food stores. Almost every store now has a section that offers organic, and I would encourage people to buy that as much as they can. If you have to pick and choose, try to get your fat and your meat organic, because toxins are stored in the fat of the animal, and then when you eat that goes into your fat. So, there's different ways that you can piece it together, but I think it's very important because it will help to reduce chemicals going into your body, and you're just going to get, in general, I think, more vitamins and minerals and nutrients from those foods.
Well, thank Jennifer for joining us this evening and for offering her insights and the many new and different things we heard tonight about nutrition. Please join us again next Sunday for Health Conclusions. This is Bob Neugebauer signing off for AltruaHealthShare.org on 580 KIDO AM and 107.5 FM.